This bandsaw is so interesting. It's taken me months to fully wrap my head around this thing. It's no exaggeration to say there has never been a saw like this, ever. And that's saying something, because who knew you could significantly improve something as basic as a bandsaw, right? I mean, there have been no really big changes in its design for generations. But that's sort of what they do at Harvey. They innovate. Their slogan is, good enough is not enough. And when they announced they'd made an intelligent bandsaw, everyone wanted one. So we started seeing the new A15 appearing in some of the big YouTube channels, and everyone started to get pretty worked up about this thing. Why? Is it just about the built-in computer? Well, that may be the first thing that jumps out at you, but the most interesting features of this saw, in my opinion, are below the surface, like the reimagined blade guides or the clever trunnion system, or what is by far the best fence ever designed for a bandsaw. And there's some hidden features that quietly keep you safer without you even noticing. If you like to see really interesting concepts, you are going to love this video, because this saw solves so many problems that have plagued woodworkers for generations. Honestly, you're going to spend the next few minutes wondering why nobody has thought of this saw before. So let me just start by saying this isn't a typical light-duty bandsaw. It's a 15-inch saw, which describes the size of the wheels or the width it can cut between the blade and the frame. So in that respect, it's not much bigger than your typical 14-inch saw that you might find in millions of garage workshops. But you wouldn't know that just from looking at it, because it is an absolute professional quality beast. It is just massively built. Look at it next to my C14 saw. It dwarfs it. Here's the C14's frame, and here's the A15 frame. It's twice as thick. Compare the upper wheels and the tensioning mechanisms between the two saws. The C14's a great saw, but the A15 is just built like a tank. It weighs 700 pounds. Now, by way of comparison, the PM 1500, which is generally considered to be one of the more robust 15-inch saws around, weighs about 300 pounds less than this. For sheer build quality, the A15 reminds me of one of those big cast iron beasts from a century or more ago. Of course, your great-great-grandfather's saw didn't have a computer module on the front. Now, before you say, a computer in a dusty shop, that'll never last, it's time we admit that that's outdated thinking. We've had electronics on everything from calipers to routers to table saws for over 20 years now. They hold up just fine. But if you're worried, this module comes off the saw if you ever need to have it serviced. They call it an intelligent bandsaw. So what sort of intelligent things can it do? Well, first, you can tell it what type of blade you're using, and the saw will calculate the proper tension. Then, as you adjust the tensioning mechanism, the saw will monitor it in real time and tell you when you have it right. This solves one of the most frustrating problems many people have with their saws, because improper blade tension leads to drifting cuts and to broken blades. The saw also monitors another key setting, the angle of the table. No more wondering if your cuts are going to be square, it will tell you if they aren't. You can also use it to dial in any angle you want for beveled cuts. And by the way, the trunnion system is a complete redesign as well. I've always hated how most other saws force you to loosen two knobs on two separate trunnions so the table will tilt. For one thing, that can throw the whole table out of alignment. And when you retighten those knobs, it usually screws up the angle you just dialed in. This saw solved that with a giant single trunnion with a slide locking mechanism. It's smooth and accurate and far beefier. Frankly, it's about time somebody got this right. Finally, the computer monitors the blade speed, because this is a 2-speed saw. It'll cut at 2,300 and 4,300 feet per minute. Not variable speed, you do have to do a quick adjustment at the motor, but that gives you more options for hardwood, wetwood, and resawing. It also seems to me that they could easily update the software long after you get the saw into your shop. I wonder what other features they may add down the road. Let me show you this fence, because this is another game-changing innovation. It runs on a linear bearing system with rollers between two rods, all stainless steel. Have you ever seen a bandsaw fence move this smoothly? It's so smooth you can micro-adjust it with a thumb wheel. Imagine how handy that would be for resawing veneers. There are also integrated flip stops for repeat cuts. Another common frustration this saw solves is blade installation. How often do you end up cutting with the wrong blade because it's such a hassle to change it out and get the guides properly adjusted? These guides are incredible. The adjustments are buttery smooth with no tools required. And the best part is you can dial them in and then just leave them there. They'll stay put on their own. You don't have to tighten a separate locking screw like you do on most saws, which then messes up the position you just dialed in. And the lower guides are easily accessible because they not only give you lots of height beneath the table, but they also put the adjustment dials where your fingers can get at them. Again, why has it taken so long for someone to get this right? The 22-inch table is big for a 15-inch saw, but it's also shiny. That's not just for looks. It's another innovation that solves a big problem: rust. All the unpainted cast iron and steel parts are nickel-plated, even inside the machine and below the table. You can literally dump water on the saw and it's not going to rust. Nickel plating is better than titanium nitride coating because it sinks deeply into cast iron and steel, forming a complete, fully sealed metallic layer. It's also thicker, so surface scratches can be polished away. And it's slicker than bare cast iron too. This is also among the safest bandsaws I've ever used. That begins actually with the guide post. On a lot of saws, these are slow and tedious to crank up and down, and they don't remain aligned throughout their motion. You may have carefully set your guide bearings down here, but as you raise the post up, the bearings get all out of whack again because the post doesn't consistently track parallel with the blade. And when you lock the post in place, it usually moves, and then that throws off everything even more. I dealt with that problem for years on a lot of different saws, and like a lot of people, I just stopped lowering the post. That not only reduces the effectiveness of the guides, but it left too much of the blade exposed during cutting. The A15's guide post solves all these problems. Not only is it made so much more robust than others, but they created a massive gearbox tracking system that keeps it aligned in any position. There's simply no run out. And they eliminated the locking knob. It just stays put on its own because the tolerances are so tight. Finally, someone got this right too. Another safety feature is the blade brake. And I don't mean a manual foot pedal on the side like some other saws have. This brake kicks in automatically when you turn the saw off, stopping the blade in just a second or two so you don't have a brain fart and accidentally reach for a cutoff before it's safe. This feature alone is going to save a lot of fingers. And just to be sure you can engage that brake in a hurry, there are quick off switches above and below the table so you can turn it off with either free hand. There are also sensors and alarms that prevent the saw from running if, for example, the doors aren't fully closed. And look at this. The blade tension arm is designed to release when it is in the down position and clearly visible when you walk up to the saw so you don't try and start it without retensioning the blade. There's also an alarm if the blade's loose. This is yet another thing that the A15 gets right. Something that caught me off guard was the sheer girth of the motor on the back. Both my saws are 3 horsepower. So why is the A15's motor so much larger? Well, we can go down a rabbit hole on motors here, but features like enhanced cooling, greater torque, more copper and iron windings in the housing, this all takes up more room, as does the built-in mechanical braking system. You don't slap a regular motor on an industrial quality saw, right? You want one that's built for the heaviest workloads in the toughest environments. And this saw has a 230 volt, single phase, 4-pole, TEFC continuous operation induction motor that appears to weigh as much as I do, and it just doesn't bog down. And that fits my overall impression from this saw. It's built to last like the cast iron dinosaurs of the past, but with smart design changes that solve problems that bandsaw users have struggled with for generations. And it adds modern features that make it just a pleasure to use. As we see more and more technology come into our workshops, it's easy to get a little worried that the craft might just become too automated. That's not the case here. Harvey has incorporated technology in clever ways that enhance the woodworking experience without changing the best part of the craft, making things with your hands. So while I agree that this saw is not in everyone's price range, it is still fun to see how smart engineers can still improve tools that most people thought were already fully evolved. Wait until you see what they're going to do with the drill press. Before I go, here's another really handy tool that may be more in your price range. This is obviously not something that they invented, but they made it more affordable, significantly so. And that's a good thing because this will make your table saw safer to use. On the bottom are grippy pads to control both halves of a workpiece throughout the cutting process, while the angled handle on top encourages pressure against the fence and down on the table at the same time. Now this greatly reduces the chance that an offcut will turn and bind between the blade and the fence, which is a major cause of kickback and amputations. The body of the jig also bridges over the top of the saw blade, protecting your hand should something go wrong if you don't have a blade guard installed. You can even use two of them together to walk longer rips through the blade for a more fluid, smoother feed with maximum control and protection. Because every situation is different, the Grabber Pro is adjustable. You can change the configuration of the soles to cut strips as narrow as 1/8 of an inch without cutting into the block. If you want extra stability for narrow workpieces, you can lower the support foot on the side. And there's a removable, replaceable sacrificial heel catch on the back for even more pushing power. I make as many cuts as possible with my table saw's blade guard in place. But when you do have to remove the guard, or if your saw doesn't have a guard, this is a significant safety upgrade in my opinion. And it can be used on the router table, on the jointer, even on the bandsaw, so you're going to get a lot of use from your investment. As I said, it's significantly less expensive than the other version on the market, yet the build quality is excellent. And the Grabber Pro comes with both 1/4 inch and 1/8 inch thin strip attachments right out of the box. And when you consider that, I think it comes in at almost half the price. So do yourself a favor and use the link below this video to check it out for yourself.